Hey everybody, in today's video I'll show you the main functionalities of getPDFapi tool. This tool aims to make your life easier by removing the struggle of writing the code that generates PDF documents yourself. If you've ever done that, you'll understand what I mean. The project is composed of two key areas, the template designer and the API generator. Let's see how it works. This is the designer. Here you can customize a template that suits your needs and then use it in the API generator. Let's design a simple invoice ourselves. On the left side of the canvas there's the Elements panel. Let's add a text block that represents the title of the invoice. You can resize an element by dragging the lower right corner. Text and table elements can have an ID associated. This ID is used to identify the layout of the element when dynamic content is sent to the API. If you simply want to have a static text block, like in our case, then don't send the ID and just edit the text from the edit text area. Let's call our invoice simply invoice. Let's also change the font and increase the font size. Maybe center it. Now let's add a dynamic text block. Let's say it represents the customer details. For a text block to be dynamic, it needs to have an ID associated. Let me set it. You can also edit the text, but for visual purposes. Once you send content to the API, this text will be replaced by the dynamic content you sent. We can add another one for the company details by simply duplicating this one. Let's change the ID now. And maybe the text. And let's increase the font a little bit for both of them. Now let's add a table. It is mandatory for the table to also have an ID associated. Let's call this one invoice table. As you can see, the edit text area is disabled. Therefore, you will not be able to edit the header of the table for now, but you can send it dynamically to the API. The content in JSON format will look like a matrix. Basically, it will be a list of lists of strings. The parent list will represent the rows and the children will represent the columns. The way you position the text in this matrix represents the way it will be displayed in the table. And for example, if you only want to have content in this cell, you need to pass a list with an empty string for this one and the content you desire for this one. You can only customize the number of columns, because rows will automatically be added at the end of the table based on the size of the content you send. For demo purposes, let's keep this table filled with only 3 columns of dummy content. Let's also place a logo in this invoice. We can use an image element for this. Images are static, therefore you don't need to have an ID associated for it. Once you upload an image, this will be saved and used in all the PDFs that are generated. Once you finish the design, you can preview the PDF generated using this template. In this pop-up, you can add some content that will be displayed in the elements that correspond to these IDs. The table will be filled automatically with some dummy content. One thing I forgot to mention is that the text and table elements will automatically grow and create new pages based on the length of the content you send. The elements positioned below the elements that grow will be placed automatically at the first available position. When I click preview, I will be prompted to download the PDF. I can save it and take a look. Here's the preview. It contains the logo, the static invoice title, the table, which is filled with dummy content, and 2 dynamic text blocks that grow a little bit and push down the table. The 2 blocks contain the same text because I was too lazy to paste another one. Now, if the preview looks okay and you're happy with it, you can click Save and generate the REST API call. When the pop-up appears, it means that the generation was successful and you can view the documentation page. Here, in the third tab, you can preview the PDF again. This is also filled with dummy content that can be viewed in the Payload tab. This is the payload model. It basically is represented by key-value pairs, with the key being the ID of the element and the value being the content. For the table, we have the ID here and the content matrix here. The content matrix is represented by rows, with each row having columns like this. Keep in mind that you can add content for as many rows as you like, but if you add more columns than you have designed, the rest of the content will be ignored. For example here, if I add 5 rows, the table will grow vertically, but if I add 5 columns, the content will be displayed in only 3 of them. Everything we've done so far is translated in this curl request. All you need to do is change the text value with your content and you're good to go. Let's see how it works. First of all, I'm going to copy the command inside the text editor. Then I'm going to use my payload inside the text node. I'm gonna delete this value and replace it with my JSON. Here, in this tab, I have a JSON that represents my invoice. Let's put it here and copy everything inside the terminal. In this terminal, first of all, I'm gonna open the folder and see that there's nothing there. As you can see, the test folder is empty. I'm gonna close it and then paste the command and output the result inside the file called invoice.pdf. Before hitting enter, I'm going to move this up a little bit. Then, when everything is done, I'm gonna open the folder again. And as you notice, there's a file called invoice.pdf here. Let's open it and see the content. The file contains the logo, our invoice title, the customer details and the company details, and the table now contains 5 rows. We have the header and 4 rows of content. That's because our list of rows contains 5 elements, the header and the values. This concludes our today's demo. Thanks all for watching and we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach us through the contact form on our website.